Hi, I'm Stephen Edwards and I'm the Director of Cheltenham Tax Accountants. So today I want to talk about how you can start your own limited company. So basically, to start a limited company, you would need to do that at Companies House. So you can basically go into Companies House, go online, literally just Google start a limited company, Companies House, and you will find a link with Companies House to start your company, and it will be basically a wizard and it will walk you through that process. The other option you have is to do it with a third party. So you can use something like Companies Made Simple or Inform Direct, and there's quite a few different options out there. So to actually form a company, typically it's going to cost you I think it's £8 actually. It's a very small amount actually in terms of the actual setup fee. However, there are some things that you need to consider setting up your company. That's why often people might pay an accountant or they might pay a formation agent, but I'm going to cover them with you now. That's why I'm doing this video. So some of the things you need to think about when you start your own limited company is the shareholders. Who's going to own the company, which is probably the most important thing. Is it going to be your company? Are you creating that company with a business partner, with a friend, with a wife, with any family members? But who's going to ultimately own that company? So if it's just one person, then you can just create one share. Typically that would be an ordinary share. You typically just call it an ordinary A class of share, and you'd have one share. And if you're the only shareholder, that effectively means you own 100% of the company. If there was two shareholders and you had one share each, that would be 50% each, and you'd own 50% of the company. The exact amount of shares you use, whether it's one share, 100 shares, it doesn't really matter. It's more to do with the proportion. So if you have one share each, that's 50-50, that's 50%. If you had 50 shares each and there was 100 shares in total, it's still 50%. So the reason why a lot of people might use 100 shares is it's 100% and it's just really easy to sort of divide it up, but it could be all different types of fancy amounts. But typically you want to look at either one share, if there's one person, or maybe 100 to give you a bit of flexibility. So you've probably got lots of questions in terms of, should I make somebody else a shareholder? Should I make my wife, my husband a shareholder? That is a completely different video. I'm not going to talk about that now because that's all to do with tax planning, and that's probably where an accountant's going to earn their wage, for want of a better word, paying them for that advice. If you're happy with your share position, you know it's just you, it's a lot more straightforward. You could just do one share. So yeah, you create the limited company at Companies House, or you use a third party, something like Companies Made Simple. And the information you need, you will need some personal information. So I think it's some random things like town of birth, eye colour, mother's maiden name, father's middle name. So some very personal information to you. You also need things like your own date of birth. Obviously you'll need your own address. You need to confirm your full name, and you will need to confirm your occupation. So that's some standard information that you will need. You will need a name for your limited company. So the thing is with names is it's basically, as long as it's not something that's rude, so something that you wouldn't say aloud, you probably can't have that as a company name. If it's a fairly, everyday word or terminology, that's normally fine. Often people might have their own surname. So my name is Stephen Edwards, so it could be Edwards & Co. Company or whatever it is. Apart from that, if you go for something different, it could be your location. It could be, we're called Cheltenham Tax Accountants, although we're based in Cheltenham and we serve mainly people around the Gloucestershire area. We have lots of clients online as well, but for different reasons, people still use a physical location. It could be London builders, Cheltenham builders, Manchester architects, that's quite common. But the world's your oyster, choose any name you want. The main thing is you can't have a name that's too similar to somebody else's company, and you can't already have the exact name. If somebody's already got that name, you obviously can't choose it. You can't just simply change it to Ltd or Limited because they're too similar. And equally, if you make very small changes and it's the same type of business, you could be causing issues for yourself later on by having that confusion, because you could get mixed up for that other business, particularly if they're a competitor. So you want to stay away from sort of copying other people's names. Similar to things like website domains. when people basically nick a different company's name and start a website domain. I think that's called domain parking. It's the same with companies, you can't sort of mimic. So go for your company, be creative, and go what makes sense for you personally. If you're not sure what your name is, but you want to create a limited company right now, don't worry. You can set up any name at the beginning and you can change it later on. However, there will be some forms required, and company name change form and a little bit of company secretarial, so it's easy if you can get it right at the beginning. So some other questions you might have, and we have got another video on this, but I'm going to do an up-to-date video on, is should I start a limited company instead of registering as a self-employed person? So there can be lots of different reasons why you might want to be a limited company. Sometimes it can be more tax efficient. It can potentially give you more of a status because it's an online business registered at company's house. But one of the main things nowadays is it can give you more protection legally because it's a limited company which is separate to you as an individual. Think of limited company as a different person or a different entity to yourself. So in a lot of instances you are more protected being limited, but you're not actually protected when it comes to most lending and financial agreements, because typically they will ask the director to sign a director's guarantee. So if all goes bellies up, then you still have to cover the company debt. But you are by and large more protected being a limited company. And that's pretty much how you set up a limited company. I could go through more specifics and bore you and complicate things, but that is generally the main things. You will need to choose a company registered address. Some people might use a PO box or their accountant's address because they don't want their personal address as the main address at company's house, because it's there for everybody to see. And also, if you were to ever get in trouble, then it would be, bailiffs. Worst case scenario, I'm sure that's not going to happen in your business. But if something were to happen, they could potentially show up at your address if you owe anybody money. So that's why a lot of people are not comfortable using their own address for the registered office, and they might use an accountant's or PO box address. That's something to think about as well. The final thing I can think of off the top of my head is you will also need a SIC code, which is basically the business activity. So this can be a bit confusing because there's quite a lot of different options available, but just choose the one that best fits your business description. So for example, our business description would be something like accounting and bookkeeping activities or accounting and tax activities, but you can basically search that on Company's House and just select the thing that's most relevant for you. But make sure you do spend the time finding the ones most relevant, because if you for example, with builders, tradesmen, there's lots of different variations, and you could potentially in that example, if that was your business, you could choose one where you're building new buildings, or you could choose one where you're repairing existing buildings. A typical builders doing improvements, extensions and maintenance. So just make sure you do pick the one that's best for you. And that's it. I'm not going to talk about your obligations once you are a limited company. We'll cover that in a different video, but it's fair to say if you've got a limited company and you are a director, you will have responsibilities with Company's House and HMRC, but we'll cover that in a different video at a later date. Thanks guys, cheers.